you guys along because when Dean Holden joins us, if he's able to get on us, uh, he's going to talk about sort of the pitfalls of minor hockey. And Michael, I saw your, I think it was a Facebook or a Twitter on some of the things that you're promoting, trying to sell, you know, the ethics of the sport and the quality of development with a different concept. So hopefully Dean can get on with us, and if he doesn't, it don't really matter. But Mike, can you, any of you, elaborate on your challenges with the system?
Well, just from my perspective, I think, when you say the system, and I look at like the governing body, right? The people that everybody we depend on for, guidance. I think what's happened is it's become driven by, private hockey enterprise, basically, over, the governing body means less and less because a lot of these organizations aren't following.
There we go.
Any of the recommendations that are there for us to use, right? And I think the research, I know, like in the U.S., the research is unbelievable. The amount of research they put into, what a youth hockey program should look like. But it falls really, especially in our region here in the Northeast, it falls, back
How you doing
to
today, Vince?
back to owners more than anything
I'm
else.
good. But, you wanted your balance. It's 191,776.
Yeah,
Oh, you got to turn your speaker off.
I muted him. I muted him.
Good.
I like that
I don't
power.
have that much money.
I like that power.
Hello, gentlemen.
No, there you go, Pete. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it is the battle of that 98% of our kids are gonna just want to be in a great, fun environment, and we just don't make it. We just don't make it fun. We make it so much work, and the expectations and the unrealistic, gains that I think everybody is expecting, and forget that if we really truly wanted to grow the game, and you wanted hockey for everyone, and you wanted more people participating, and you wanted to make more money as an organization, you would make it so much more recreational and so much more in-house and so much more, there's a reason why like theme parks do so well, right? You don't make really good roller coaster participants and then send them and say, hey, you're so good at doing our roller coaster, you should go to every other theme park and never come back to ours again. They want them in their theme park. They want them in their building all the time. You're on mute, Wally. No. Still, there you go.
I'll jump in here. There, I think the organization, like the way it's organized in the states, and I know every state is a lot different, right? It's not so much of that here, but it started a couple of years ago with these breakaway leagues, and now we're starting to go to where you guys are. Like I told you, how this U13 team had the hand dryers and their own skate sharpeners and all this kind of stuff for basically grade 6, 7 kids. And it's kind of going that way, and the cost is driving kids out of the game so much. It's kind of a scary thing what's happening. Like a $20 stick takes them to make in Sherwood. They charge $350 for it. What's that? 2,000% markup.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem. But yeah, so that's my 2 bits worth on that one.
Tom, I'll interject if I could too. Like in my area, everything unfortunately seems to ultimately be a return on investment. Even at the mite level, while those kids are getting started because they're excited about the game, the parents want them involved. They're already looking down the road to what are the steps to get my son or my daughter to a college scholarship, maybe above and beyond that. They're looking for a return on the investment as opposed to what Mike is saying, simply teaching them to love the game. And then in many ways, things sort of begin to take care of themselves in regards to where you might fall in or out. But they push the process so hard that they a lot of them just suck the fun out of it for the kids and themselves too, really, which is the unfortunate part. You're supposed to enjoy things you do with your children, not have them all seem like chores and be so frenetic that there has to be this ultimately return on my investment or else it's a failure. Things didn't work. They're not really willing to take it for what it is.
Yeah, well, now kids don't play the game, they work at the game.
Right.
I think we're all young, we just played the game and the better ones rose to the top. And probably the better ones just rise to the top now anyways. But everybody, that's their goal instead of having fun, like you just said, Peter.
Yeah, no, exactly. You hit it nail on the head there. That's exactly what it is. Just instead of having it fun and all the other benefits that you get out of it, and then maybe you're fortunate to be one of those that rises above. If you do, that's great. If you don't, it can be great too because you had this wonderful experience instead of sort of choking the life out of it along the way.
Well, everybody eventually becomes a beer hockey player anyways. I walk in the rink, we have 6 groups, old guys groups over 55. And I walked in the other day and 3 former NHLers walked to the other side. And we're all playing beer league hockey. So, that's where you end up at the end of the day anyways.
Right.
Well, I'm just trying to get a hold of Dean. I talked to him on the phone. He says he's trying to join. So I just text him a message and hopefully he's the guy that brought this idea up with me. And I think Dean's conversation is going to be the same. Every one of us are the same. I think what I'd like to do is brainstorm the why is it that way? What's the cause behind it? And if you can look at the cause, what can be done about it? And when can it be done? So it's all about, trying to find a solution because I have an idea of what the problem is, but what's the cause of this? What's the grassroots bottom line reason this is happening?
Well, my own feeling is it's not hockey, by the way. I think it's every sport I do. I run a pretty substantial high level lacrosse program, and the parents want the kids to be in a professional atmosphere sooner and sooner and sooner, and I think they value that as success. Like I think everybody, when you see an organization, and again, I work with organizations all over the world, and if you really sat down and did the math, an in-house recreational numbers game is going to make you much more money than the one pro athlete out of the 4,000 that were in your rink produces. And I think that's where, to me, that's where I see it the most is this professionalization, this need for parents to feel value that their kids look like little pros, so therefore they must be developing like pros, is in every sport. It's in soccer, it's in lacrosse, it's in hockey. I think in hockey, it's probably a little bit more exposed only because of the price, like what you're paying. I mean, it's, the highest level lacrosse kid we have right now at the third, fourth grade level, maybe is dumping $2,500 for a season, to go all in. That same hockey kid at CJR or Mid Fairfield or one of these brick kids is paying about $27,000 a year. So imagine your third or fourth grader spending $27,000 a year on hockey, and there's a lot of pressure for return on that, right? I would imagine if you make a brick team when you're a Pee Wee minor, you make the Quebec team, you're pretty much expecting that you're going to get a pro contract. I would say that to a man. There's no doubt that if you surveyed those parents that make the Quebec, tournament, that every one of those, that 98% of those parents feel like that's a pre-ticket to an NHL draft choice. No doubt.
You think maybe it's a human condition too. And I'll just say this because of pickleball. Pickleball, the guys I know, pickleball, they were just, they did it for exercise. Guys are playing pickleball. And now it's got, everybody's ranked. Guys are going to pickleball lessons. Everybody's ranked. You go in tournaments with your own, whatever level you are, and you can go to pickleball tournaments all over North America. And I don't know if it's in Europe too, but I think maybe that's just what us as humans do.
Yeah. But I think if the kids had the choice, the kids don't know. Like, the kids only know what you tell them, right? So an 8-year-old doesn't know they're not playing super elite hockey. I was joking around. I think Wally, I posted it on one of my social media sites. There's a elite prospects tournament down in Tampa, Florida last weekend, and Pete, a couple of teams from our area went down there. One of them was the Connecticut Junior Rangers. Another one was the Westchester Express, which are 20 miles from each other. And they all left school on Wednesday, missed school Thursday, missed school Friday, flew down to Tampa, and Westchester played Connecticut Junior Rangers Thursday morning in the first game of the tournament. 20 miles from each other.
That's the worst thing that happens when you travel.
And to me, these are unforced errors. Like, these are things that we can simply, easily fix and avoid. But the fact that they were down there playing, if I was to interview the 30 parents that were on either bench or on either stands, would have said, well, we needed to do this for exposure, right? For the exposure of our kids. Now, you got to remember something. The Connecticut Junior Rangers is coached by Bob Crawford and Jeff Hamilton. They make a phone call to any prep school in the country, the kids are getting into the school without even getting looked at. If Bob Crawford and Jeff Hamilton call a prep school and say, Mike Benelli you guys see this kid play, he should go to your school, they don't even have to look at the kid. That's in. They're in. If the other coach on the Express team is Bob Thornton. Now, Bob Thornton works with the Org Group. I mean, Pete, you would know how many draft choice, how many pro hockey players has he signed? John Tonelli's agent, an agent to the Stars, all these NHL guys. You're already getting exposure by playing for Bob Thornton. Like, you made his team. You've already gotten the exposure you need, and now you got to go to Dallas and Tampa and Chicago and Alaska to get exposure. I just truly don't. I can't even conceptualize how this is accepted by hockey parents, and I think that's really where and that, in a nutshell, that's where we're at, and it's no longer at 18 years old. Now it's at 6-year-olds.
Mike, I think it's a big part of it. Honestly, is just simply marketing. There was a old friend that I had who, and I've told this story before, worked for Procter and Gamble, right? Soaps and all that they sold. And he said the first day that he went there, they put up a picture of a steak on the at that time on the screen, and everyone looked at it and they said, "So what are we selling here? What do we got here?" And they started talking about the marbling and all that. And they said, "No." He went to the next slide, and there was an 8-course meal, all laid out with the steak, with the onions, with all the aperitifs, everything you can imagine. And the salesman that was running it said, "You sell the sizzle, you don't sell the steak. You sell the sizzle." And that's what people are buying. They're buying the sizzle.
Right. But if you own a rink and you really want to make money, if you own a facility that you need to pay, a $8 million note on, then you wouldn't do this. You would do more in-house recreational. You'd have 300 teams of mediocre hockey players paying a lot of money, because it's not the money. Like where I am here in New York and Connecticut, Fairfield County, New Jersey, it's not the money.
No, I know, but I think one of the things, and this will probably come as a huge surprise, is there's a lot of ego involved in hockey.
No,
I don't know if you knew that, but
I know Tom has a big ego, so I get that from his call. So.
and you're 100%
Hey, you
right.
should have seen my goal Tuesday night. Switched hands, scored.
Yeah,
Wally,
you're
your mic's off.
absolutely right. Load it up with learn to play, learn to skate. You'd make a ton of money, but it wouldn't be sizzle. There'd be no sizzle there.
Well, I'd like to talk about, before I introduce Dean, and I'll get him to tell a bit of his background. Tom, I think you said it in two words. It's human condition. How can you affect that human condition, the ego, the idea that I'm better than you or you're better than me and I'm going to be the best and we live through life better than what? So it's that human condition at the grassroots level. The kids don't know about it, but it's just like racism. They learn it because we breed it. And the idea of having these conversations and complaining, we all know, and we could tell the stories of from our angles in our areas. And to me, the prep school expansion is sort of the first sign of kids going away to have a better chance of getting a scholarship, number one, and to play at the highest level they possibly can. And I have to sort of sanction that because the quality of coaching in associations, elite associations, is not as good as it could be because the governing bodies created certification programs that are rubber stamp checklist programs, and we're not educating coaches about the art of coaching, the emotional intelligence side of coaching, the teaching, the science. That's lacking, and that's our fault. And I say it's the fault of our governing body, but literally, we're the governing body, we're the influencers. Coaches become those people. You know, every player becomes a coach, and every coach eventually becomes a leader in an association, and they all are going to have the same conversations we're having. So, Dean, you're doing some interesting research, and you've spent a long time in your life, and we've had a good intro getting the American take on things. But I'd like you to introduce yourself, Dean. Tell a bit about yourself and the text you sent me yesterday, wondering about today's session. Go ahead, Dean.
Well, thanks, Wally. I think most of the guys here probably know me already, but I'm back in Calgary. I'm finishing my PhD this year, sociology of sport. I'm looking at my experiences as a coach from the lens of a North American working in Europe and Asia. So the title of my thesis at this point is The Nomad Coach. And if you've been in coaching for any length of time, most of us are nomads in one way or the other, moving from place to place, contract to contract. So I'm looking at it through obviously whatever preconceptions I bring to the table, but also then working in a different culture with a different language sometimes, or that sort of thing. So I find it interesting anyway to see these differences. I texted Wally just like because I have an hour this morning that was free and clear of calls, and I asked him the question. I wonder what the guys on the call would say about their perceptions of leadership gaps or failings or areas in which need to be improved around the leadership that comes top down. So kind of touching on what Wally just said there about the NSOs, NGBs, you know, and not just national bodies, but it could be regional or local bodies. And you know, with all the experience on the call, what gaps do you guys see from the elements of leadership coming down to us? And I really like the what Wally just said there about the, you know, the coach education. It's put out there by these national governing bodies and you know, not necessarily foisted upon us, but we have to take it if we want to coach. And then after that, then what? You know, like Wally says, is it strictly a matter of checking the boxes and then, all right, Hal, you've got the highest level of coaching. Good. We'll see you in the next lifetime. Right. So that was my question. It's, you know, more so than any real stories around it for myself. I mean, we've all got many. I was just curious to hear your guys's perceptions from wherever you've been and wherever you are now, to maybe help identify some of these potential failings. And then let's identify these gaps, because I'm just going to take a few and you know, I'm just going to try to look to, it's not necessarily be a complaint session, but it's an identification session. So then maybe we can start to see if there's any themes or commonalities across all of our experiences. And that's how we start to identify possible solutions. So Hal, I don't know how to work this Skype, but I see somebody's got their hand up. So if I'm back in my classroom, I'm thinking that the student has a question. We're all students here. So Hal, whatever, I'll shut up and start us off.
Hi, good morning. I think you're right on. I think we all know the issues and they start at the top. You know, I went to the first USA Hockey. They now call it Level 5. We used to call it Masters. It was in 1986. It was 4 days at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And it was fabulous. So much learning and so much going on. And then coach education was not required until the early 90s, I think, I don't know, I can't remember, 92 or 93, because they discovered how much money they could make by requiring the coaching. And this is, you know, this is the same whole thing. It's all about, this is about money. I'm in the money business. And you know, and so is sport. I mean, I think I'm in Minnesota. I think it's almost a $2 billion industry in Minnesota now, all in. And as Michael was talking, you know, I mean, we run elite programs, high performance programs, tier 1, tier 2. This is all off season. And a Pee-wee could pay, off season could pay between $15,000 and $20,000 a year now in Minnesota, which is absurd. 1 out of 1,000 high school players in Minnesota might have a chance to play professional hockey somewhere, not necessarily the National Hockey League. 1 out of 1,000. On that one, no, that's actually, those are NCAA statistics. 1 out of 1,000 high school kids in the United States will play beyond college, and about 5% or less, I think the number's closer to 3, will even have a chance to play some level of college hockey, not necessarily Division I. So that's where you get to pay $40,000 a year to play hockey and go to school. And so I don't, you know, I think it's a culture thing, like, you know, like Wally and Tom suggested. Americans are hyper competitive. We have a whole generation of people who are extraordinarily wealthy, and not totally because they deserved it. It's just that they got it. Living in the United States for sure, and they can't think of any better way that. I mean, they buy junior teams for a huge amount of money so their kid can play on it. I look at right now, we've got some situations going on here in Minnesota, one in our own program, And there are more lawyers involved than there are players involved. And USA Hockey is scared to death. They have a case in South Dakota on a locker boxing incident that happened 2 years ago, and they're going to settle it. They're in mediation, I understand, and it's going to cost USA Hockey $10 million. They had 3 cases last year down in the southern states at the Bantam level, coach abuse of players. 3 cases, then the settlements are somewhere between $5 and $6 million to the families. Now so you create an organization and you put all these people supposedly through your coaching and your due diligence, and and this is the kind of stuff that happens. So USA Hockey, and you guys had your problems in Canada too, and not just in hockey, and we've had it not just in hockey in the United States. It's run amok, and I think it's really sad. And again, it's a little different out east and out west and wherever, but here in Minnesota, it's like we have 50,000 hockey players in Minnesota, and on average, 150 of them end up playing Division I hockey in any year. So I don't know. I think it's parent driven. I think it's ego driven. It's money driven, and the kids are just kind of fodder in this whole game. So that's my 2 cents on it, and I'm getting pretty worn out by it too. So.
And Mike, Wally,
I put my hand up because as you're talking about court cases. Tim, remember when you drove me up to scout, was it a 10-year-old boy? His parents were divorced over the kid playing hockey. And it might have been level 3 U12, Tim, or U10?
yeah, something like that. I mean, it was small town, low level hockey, that's for sure.
But I got a call from a lawyer at the recommendation of a retired NHL friend to take this case on. Yeah, this was money. I was going to get paid, and so was Tim, to drive up there, do a formal scouting, and submit a report that was to go to the lawyers. And I had the lawyers. One of the lawyers wanted us to go and scout again, and the other one kept sending me things. No, you can't. You've done all you should. But it was a zoo. But that's the reality, and it gets back to Tom's human condition. Mom and dad, their relationship was ruined by the ego of what we're talking about. So you're absolutely right. It's a serious problem. I believe there is a solution, but I think it's important to sort of rekindle the fire of what's going on here. And more importantly than that is, what can you do about it? What can we do about it? Anyway, that's my 2 bits worth. And Dean, there's one guy who's been through it and managed to succeed in doing it the right way, his way, an ethical coach who's just done it all. And that's Rick Puttock. And Rick, I don't know if your speaker's working or not and how much of the conversations you've heard, but I wonder if you could speak to this, Rick, and add some value to the conversation, because I know the sports governing body created a good code of conduct. And you were one of the very few, the only one that has managed to take that and deliver on it, which to me means it's too complex, because if only one can deliver on it, it's good for you, it worked for you, it hasn't sustained your coaching, but now you're mentoring and being respected because you're dealing with these problems. So, Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you and just go wherever you want on this.
Okay, Wally, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I tuned in a little bit late, so I caught the tail end of the general discussion that was going on, and then listening to Dean's comments, just reminded me of when I first started coaching. It was before coaching education or coaching certification was mandated. And I was at one of the first sessions in Calgary with a number of other coaches, probably 30 or 40 of them, that had obviously coached, in my estimation, a lot longer than I did. And one of the observations I had, and just overhearing all the comments, was, why am I here? I've been doing this forever. I know what I'm doing. Why do I need to take this training? And after almost 40 years, or more than 40 years actually, of doing this, if I were to go to a coaching clinic today or in the mentoring I'm doing now, I'm seeing that same reaction. Not much has changed in that era. Everybody who has played the game or is a Canadian seems to feel that they know what the game's all about. I actually had one fellow on the ice that I was mentoring telling me that I was explaining why we were doing something and why I preferred to do it this way. And he said, I don't have to listen to you. I'm going to do it my way. And in my opinion, my observation, that whole attitude is pervasive. It's the rare case where a coach nowadays recognizes that he doesn't know it all and actually seeks help from others and seeks advice and seeks ideas. And maybe that's a little off topic for the idea of the elite stream of hockey, but I think that is part of the problem. As far as the academies, the super leagues, and the like that are going on both in winter season and spring and summer, that is predominantly ego driven by the parents that can afford to do that. They'll pay exorbitant sums of money. One of my boys is a coach, and he's in that environment this season, first time. He's shocked, surprised, not sure what to do with. He's got what's labeled as a AAA team, and he tells me that he's got maybe one qualified AA player in the group, and the rest is just, I can afford to be here. I want to say that my son is playing AAA, and they're actually offering him more money to come back and do it again next year with the same group. To me, that's not the right way to go about it. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Rick. That's I think your son coached with you back in the day, if I recall. Like, 'cause I think weren't you out like in Strathmore with the midgets for a fair bit there? And is it Derek? Is that your boy?
You got it, D.
Yeah, I haven't. I lost track of him. I used to touch base with him every once in a while. Say hello for me. I haven't seen him in Coon's age. So, but yeah, I appreciate your comments on that, Rick. I'm curious now. You don't have to say it on air where he's coaching. I'll have to try and look him up. Any of you other fellas have any other experiences which you can identify potentially some issues with leadership from governing bodies? Go ahead, guest user raising their hand.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
me.
I don't know the name there. I
Yeah,
just
well,
see guest
that's
user.
I've changed my name to guest user because it's so much easier.
Witness protection, maybe.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be on here. Wouldn't be on here if it was witness protection. Let me tell you that. For me, I think one of the things that I see is, and I've learned a lot, like working with Mike Benelli with the USA Hockey and the coaching education that we do. But one of the things I always noticed was when we did that education, it didn't matter if you were a squirt coach, let's say for your local town team, or you were a squirt coach for the highest level AAA program in the state. And they're two different things, right? Once you learn those basics, certainly the atmosphere and environment that we put that town youth coach into is very different from what that AAA coach gets. Yet it's the same training. And where is the guidance? To me, that's really where it goes. I think that's the first step, is getting the like Wally's saying, getting those boxes checked. But after that, where does it go from there? Do they have hockey directors? How good are the hockey directors? What are they doing? What's their mission statements? All those other things. I think to some degree, especially those younger coaches who are excited about doing this, and they get that first time job as a AAA, and then they're just bombarded by these parents, and that kind of stuff is never really taught in the process or talked about until you kind of get there.
Hal?
I would tail in on that, because the USA Hockey Coach Education Program, and you guys are involved in it, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. When they originally started, you start at it was associate, intermediate, and advanced, and then masters. But to go to the next level, you couldn't just sign up and write a check. You had to have coached for a while. And to get into the master, or what we now call level 5, you had to be invited in because of the work you've done as a coach. And now it's just, I mean, I know, I bet I could name 30 people who are level 5 master level coaches, USA Hockey, that have never coached a day in their life. Right, but you know, USA Hockey makes $1 million running these programs, and now most of it's online. And you know, I haven't looked at it for a few years, but the level, Mike, maybe level 2, it still has a whole 40 minutes, or did have a whole 40-minute session on the detrimental effects of drinking alcohol on the weekend and how it impacted a whole week's worth of training for 10-year-olds. It's like, so that's
Must be big.
to your point, yes, user. It's, you know, it's not specific to where the coach is going to be coaching, and you know, they just did it. They just blanket everybody with the same thing and call it good to go. And so I ran some programs here in Minnesota for a while in our district on ice with coaches at different levels, because I absolutely 100% believe that the quality of experience that a player gets is directly related with a coach. Now, we have high school hockey in Minnesota, and they have no requirements for training. And their only goal is to win as many games as possible. And therefore, they'll have a bench of 20 and they play 10. And the ironic part about it is parents of the kids on the 3rd and 4th line don't care, as long as their kid's on that varsity hockey team. And if it's a good team and they win, they're all happy. And so, I don't know. There's a lot of issues involved in all of this. So, well, I'll lower my hand now. Well, he's talking to somebody else.
No, I had to go. I really don't know where to go on this, because I'm getting a bit of an echo in my sound, so I'm going to shut it off.
Oh no, that's probably.
Anyway, I'm curious, Tim, you've played at a high level, coached at a high level. You haven't really coached minor hockey that I know of, but you've been involved in mentorship. So I wonder if you could speak to this at all and provide some perspective on it.
Well, you are right, that Wally, that 1 year that you and I coached at the Edge, that was like midget. Well, it was supposed to be midget, well, it was a midget AAA league, but our team was like a average AA team. It's the year from hell coaching wise. That's the only experience really I have with coaching minor hockey, aside from mentoring in Alberta Cup last April, which was, again, that's hardly like minor hockey. These are, you know, a lot of them first round junior draft picks and, you know, good kids on their best behavior. But, you know, I mean, I've talked about it before. Like, I think we're back. I think a lot of the issues are, as we've all said, are sort of parent driven, and right now Hockey Canada is getting beaten over the head for lack of leadership, and they deserve some of that, but really, in my view, it goes back to the parents. You know, I saw a lot of stuff in my day as a player. I didn't take part in it. I attribute that to just having good parents that sort of taught me, hey, this is right, this is wrong. And if you see something that's wrong, ideally you try to speak up, but you just don't take part if you in some of the stuff that goes on. But you know, that's sort of on the behavioral side, and it's just such a big nut to crack. I'm really interested to see what's going to come out of the whole board change at Hockey Canada on the coaching, leadership, training, instruction, specifically, because as we're saying, that's where it all sort of starts, with the individual branches and what they're actually trying to teach their coaches. It's a big nut to crack. And, you know, and sort of to Rick's point on, you know, the young coaches thinking they know what they need to do and know where it's all at. I think that's always been a problem, and it's still a big problem. Those 4 stages of learning as a coach, when you start out, you don't know what you don't know, is where everybody starts. It's a tough one, but I'm not sure I have anything really to add, Wally. You know, I think we talked as well before. Like, I think the Coaching Association of Canada has really good intentions in terms of their education program, but you know, it's just such a hard delivery mechanism to get coaches to take a week off or take a weekend off. And really, is that even enough? Does it even begin to address the problems when they really, you know, it's more technical, tactical based, and really should be ethically based, like Wally's saying, for starters anyway. Like, you shouldn't be able to start coaching unless you take an ethical coaching, you know, decision-making course, and understand that, you know, certainly below Bantam AAA, and we can have that discussion again, but it's about fun, enjoyment, and participation, and not about winning. But how is that ever going to change? I don't know how that's ever going to change.
Tim, before I get Hal to chime in, and then Dean, the solution to me is simple. It's in education, and the governing body determines the requirements at every level. And the thing that has never been attended to in a proactive fashion is ethical coaching modules. The art of coaching behavior, accomplishing the things you want from playing a sport. And right now, the only ethical module would be at a level 4 here in Canada, Hal. It's a reactive 8-hour module at the high performance level of dealing with problems. What do you do when somebody has drugs? What do you do when there's a theft? What do you do when there's abusive online behavior? It's not coaching to prevent those kind of behaviors, and educating coaches. Somebody used the term, Dean did, top down. Dean, the most important part is bottom up. When that coach gets educated and grows up and walks the talk of doing things the right way, you're going to develop more NHL players than ever before if you want, but with an ethical foundation that they've lost in the process of going up the hockey ladder. So that's sort of my preaching about the solutions that are available that governing bodies can take hold of, because the X's and O's, people are just going to YouTube and they're going to sharing drills and just running drills and trying to win games by shortening the bench. And there's no concept of the art of coaching and dealing with behaviors to build a team to become a champion. Anyway, Dean, I'm going to let you speak, and there's a lot of people with their hands up here off and on. So, and anybody else, make sure you get your hand up to chime in. Thank you.
Hal, did you had your hand up before me, I think, didn't you?
Well, I think everything we're talking about is so great. One of the biggest issues, and we're involved in a pretty serious one right now, but everybody's a volunteer. And most coaches in minor hockey, they're either there, they coach because they played, but they get a fee discount for their kid, and they get to play them all the time. But, you know, and I actually get paid okay for what I'm doing, but, you know, with the issue that we're dealing with, I have no authority. I have no authority to discipline the kids. And now it's gone up to a district level. This is where the attorneys are all now involved. And those people at the district, they're just volunteers. Nobody's getting paid except the attorneys in this case. And then the only people that really make money in hockey, at least in Minnesota, are those that run these off-season programs where there's no oversight, there's no coaching requirements, there's nothing. So it's, you know, it's the money that's driving, money and ego, as we talked before, and the poor youth coaches who are inadequately prepared to coach teams and to deal with parents. Now, I haven't had any parent problems for a long time because I'm actually older than the parents. I'm as old as their parents. And so they don't give me any grief, but you know, they don't, but they think it's okay not to come to practice. It's okay this, and we have codes of conduct, we have all this stuff, and nobody pays any attention to it. And I think you know, it's discouraging, and I think it's too bad. So others want to talk. I gotta go to work here in a minute. So I love this, you guys. Keep at it.
Hal, I'm going to ask Peter to chime in, and I've got one question. Hal, is there any accountability in your program?
Well, what's going to happen in our program, I believe, I don't know for sure, but we've got one kid suspended for the rest of the season. And then they're going to suspend several of the other players for 1 or 2 games. They're going to suspend the head coach, that's me, even though it occurred when I was out of town. And what the incident occurred while I was out of town. So I wasn't even there. And they telling me the reason they're going to do this is because there's so many lawyers involved, and that now it's USA Hockey is running for cover in this whole thing. This is a B Bantam team. The kids are 13 and 14, and none of them are, I don't think any of them will ever play at the next level at all. They just don't have the skills to do it. And is there any accountability? You know, I don't know. And what they're saying is, even though I was 800 miles away, it comes back to the head coach. And I'm going, really? You know, where in the rest of the world does that work? And so, you know, we've only got 5 games left. I mean, and the incident occurred in early December. And so you know, I fed it right up to all of the people who should have taken action and didn't. So accountability is coming, and I would say the board of our local association is going to have a significant change in leadership for failure to lead. But, you know, and those are all volunteer positions. So I don't know. So that answers your question.
Thank you. It really does, because accountability is a part of what we want to educate coaches to do. Hold their players accountable for behaviors before they go to court.
Yeah.
And prevent them as they grow up the minor hockey ladder. So, Peter.
Well, the parents don't think the kids did anything wrong, but locker boxing is wrong.
Well, this is where
There you go.
Rick is an expert in this area if he wants to comment later. But Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I think Dean deferred first, Wally.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Dean, go ahead.
Well, thanks, Wally. Well, it was just as Tim and then Wally chimed in after Tim. Just kind of going back a little bit here, we were talking about how the coach certification was just ticking the boxes, and even, you know, Rick touched on it earlier when he talked about, you know, how attitudes seemingly haven't changed for a lot of coaches over the last 40 years. You know, why am I here? I know what I'm doing. But what Tim and Wally were kind of talking about there led me to ask the question here about the leadership regarding certification. So, I mean, most of you guys, probably all you guys, you know, have mentored at some point. Aside from, like, at least here with our certification program, a lot of it's just attendance based. So you might have to do some online stuff on a course and or in person, sit and listen, maybe you get to go on the ice. And then, you know, at that point, okay, good, you've checked the boxes, you've put in your time, so to speak, you're good. We'll grant you certification. And I think Hal was talking about this at the start with USA Hockey as well, how they structure it and how the structure has changed because it's become a money-making entity for Hockey USA and every governing body. And I think for our HP1 here, you know, again, it used to be coach level, intermediate, advanced 1, advanced 2, and then level 4 and 5. And now it's, you know, the nomenclature's changed probably 3 or 4 times since I started back in the early 80s. But where's the role of mentorship here? Because aside from at the HP1, here, you know, for Hockey Alberta, Hockey BC, across the country, when you evaluate a coach, I mean, they certainly have to attend and put in time either online and or in person. And at the end, they have to, you know, answer a bunch of questions. They get an exam, they go back and they take it, and it's supposed to be somewhat of an applied exam, like, you know, using it at whatever your specific level is, and you answer questions within that context. And then somebody from a governing body, like at the provincial or national level here, will go out, and it's the same for HP2 as well. And you go out and you watch a couple practices, maybe in a game or two, and it might be 1 practice, 1 game, might be 2 practices, 1 game. You know, it's probably no more than 4 on-site observations and visits. And at that point, if you've passed your exam and some Yoda guy shows up and waves their magic wand and says you've met these requirements, after that, I think unless you need to achieve another higher level of certification to coach, you're probably not going to see another mentor unless you actively go out and find one on your own, or you happen to work within an association that offers some sort of a mentorship program. But that's not to satisfy a governing body. That's probably considered an add-on. At least That's my perspective on it. So my question is, where does mentorship fall into not just the certification, because I've kind of gone over what little it does have effect during the certification, but I think my own failure or identification of a failure here with leadership is we let these guys go after a tick box, and then what? You know, some of them I think would like to continue to learn. A lot of them don't care, but where do you guys see the leadership around mentorship? Should it be coming from a national governing body, you know, or is mentorship simply an add-on if you're interested? I'll defer to the group at large here. I think is it Peter? Is that your witness protection name for guest user?
Yes, call me today. Just call me Peter.
Okay, today. So I don't want to get too into U.S. politics, but you don't happen to be George Santos, do you?
Mhm.
I can't say that really. I can't.
Okay, go ahead, Peter.
So here's my question, in regards to, really whatever, we can talk about Canadian wise, American wise. What if any modules are out there for the parents to better understand the hockey process, define best practices and behaviors, and what their part is and what they can do to support programs? So I guess my question is, and it sort of falls in line, it's at the beginning before mentoring, right? Because if there is a certain expectation and behavior and we know how we're supposed to act, then there's potentially less issues. But is parent education overlooked? And is it overlooked? Why is it overlooked? Just because it's too hard? So that's kind of my question, is what is out there for the parents? Because at the end of the day, when you talk to a coach, the issues that they have, it almost always comes up, what parent, right? This parent said this parent said that. How do I deal with this parent's expectations? How do I deal with this situation? What's out there to give the parents a better idea of what they should actually expect and what the process is?
Well, hell, or Peter, I'll just mention the one thing that I've done as a mentor, being asked to work with U13, so-called elite female hockey coaches. And you all know about the mission statement exercise, and I advocate that the problems we're talking about will be prevented over a period of time. And I'm saying that period of time would be probably 8 to 15 years. But if education begins and this mission statement exercise is created and dealt with in a fashion at every level that suits that level, you wouldn't have these issues. So these two Pee Wee teams I coached with, Tom was having difficulty with his team at the beginning of the year because the parents had coached their kids growing up until they were 13, and now they're an elite team and they can't have a parent coach, although there is a parent coach and 4 assistants on the other team. So they all get along well, and I'm sort of mentoring the other team. My first line with the coach of the other team after watching one game, I questioned his bench management and I said, look, I'm going to tell you, if you are shortening the bench at the end of the game to try to win the game, I'm gone. I'm not going to work with you. I'm about development and ethical coaching. And the first tournament of the season, before the official season starts, and it wasn't happening, but I didn't know. I thought somebody got out there a little bit out of turn, but I brought it up. And he said, no, by no means. My philosophy is to roll them, to develop them. And Tom was having difficulty coaching the other team because he wasn't accepted by the parents who wanted to coach, and he already had competent assistants like Cassie Campbell and his son, who he's coached with for many years. So he didn't need parent coaches, but he was uncomfortable because they didn't look him in the eye. They turned their backs on him. And he told me about it, and I said, let me do the mission statement exercise with the parents. So at a practice where there was a boardroom where Tom was on the ice with his team, I gathered all the parents together and did the exercise. And I went through it in minute detail. It was the best thing I ever did. For the entire practice time, it was about an overall an hour and a half session where they got to talk and get an established, agreed upon perspective of what they were there for. And it took 2 months for them to complete the mission statement, but they did it on a fridge magnet to remind them of what they're there for in terms of how they're going to do things. How are they going to walk the talk that we're talking about? It saved Tom's butt. And the atmosphere is much more civil, positive, enjoyable for everyone. I haven't needed to do the mission statement exercise with the other group, but I'm promoting doing it with the other team because even though the season's almost over, the players are young enough and the parents need to get the perspective that they got from that exercise. And when you do this exercise, I advise the coaches to recruit good parents to get on the boards so that we get the people that are like-minded in terms of ethical coaching and development in place. So that's sort of my background on it. And it's in keeping with everything that Rick Puttick's done, that he's been able to do with a code of conduct, which is really a list of rules and consequences holding players accountable and parents accountable to those behaviors. And I feel the exercise complements any code of conduct that you could have. I'm not as worried now about doing it about coaches, with coaches. It still has to be done. They have to understand it and deliver on it and walk the talk as they coach. But I now feel that getting parents early in the year in a room while players are practicing, that mentors could do this exercise with them. It's my role as a mentor in AA and AAA hockey. One role: protect the coaches, to be the buffer from the parents, let them know I was on top of things, was aware of what they were doing, and if I failed to cross the line, I would address it.
But how on a grander scale, not organization wise, like you're talking about doing, which is great, it's awesome, right? But I'm pretty sure you can't get to every organization in Canada and do this. But there is one body that can, just like in the States, there is one body that can reach everybody. How do they do that? Should they do that? I guess that's really kind of what I'm asking.
Well, I agree with you, but it starts with the coaches doing it.
Sure.
And if you do this at Coach 1, which is half ice hockey, they really don't need the exercise, but they do, because when they go into Coach 2, which is here is your whole ice hockey, they've done it before. They understand the perspective piece. We're educating them about the ethics of coaching, what's right and what's wrong. We're doing the parenting piece that parents all want to be able to do, but lose track of because of the human condition, as Tom. So coaches can make the difference, given the tools at a young age, and being able to do it with the parent group. There are experienced coaches in every association who would be very good at delivering this session. Every one of you could do this session with a parent group. And if they come out of it with a mission statement and the coach has done the exercise and is supported because he's thinking the right way, he's held accountable, or she's held accountable as a coach to that mission statement. And I believe it's not like it's an idea for a solution. We've talked about the problems over and over and over again. They're going to keep happening, but it's time to really try to do something concrete about them. And as I mentioned to Hockey Canada's plight, I thought the time was right to implement this in terms of saving face for Hockey Canada to do the right things. This is one of the most right things they could ever do. But it's sort of, you don't understand the value of it. It's the outcome will be paid for 12 years down the road and sooner as you go up the ladder. But that's
Brent here.
okay, Brent.
How are you? Oh,
Welcome back, Brent. It's good to see you. I thought of you last night when the Connor Bedard was on the televised on the Hitman game against the Regina Pats last night, and the camera panned Hitman Hart in the stands, and I remember the picture of you when you played with the Hitman, and Hart and you were photographed together. Go ahead, Brent. Please introduce yourself for the group. Brent is a former guest. His daughter plays on a midget AA team with a coach, Jordan Fenton, that's usually on our calls. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Brent.
so hello, everyone. I'm in Arizona, Maricopa right now, just getting ready to go team rope. But I had to log in because this is one of the most impactful groups that I always look for information. But I'm just going to chime in on, it's called Hockey Canada, Hockey USA, WHL, Canadian Junior A. They use big platforms. In Canada, they call it Respect in Sports. So that's how they educate people in person. And this big platform touches millions of parents, millions of coaches. Very effective. It's the gold standard. However, I think the times are now changing, and especially in diversity in sports and mentoring. I think that we need to really look at in-person training, what Wally's talking about, mentorship, and have a developed program that people can adopt where it's in-person training. Because when we talk about training, a lot of times when it's done on the computer, it's effective, but is it more impactful in person, listening to a diversity speaker or a discrimination speaker talk about mental wellness issues? In Canada, we have Brady Leavold and a couple ex-players that are talking about it in person. It means so much more. They promote it on TikTok to the masses. I think everybody's got a computer screen and everybody's got a iPhone or an Android. We have to look at new ways. The NFL is doing in-person training to 30,000 players, employees, and staff. And that has to do with online gambling. And I think they're going down the right route. So I just wanted to drop some support behind what Wally's doing, but we need to come together because it needs to be two different parts of training. Another option is working in partnership with NCAA, NHL, and getting the training methods out there to the masses during hockey games and stadiums and social media. That way they get trained at the masses, but also get trained on the ground.
Good point. Thanks very much, Brent. Are you competing today are you roping, you said today?
Yeah, I was going to rope today, but I think I'm going to take a day off and start doing some more diversity work and inclusion work. I currently help some organizations in Canada for their sports diversity, so I have to get a lot of work done, and I think I have to do it today. Yep. Emails are piling up.
Yeah. Well, I just want to compliment you on the work you're doing and the diversity work you're doing. I really believe what we're talking about is just going to create a healthier society, but we have to start with our kids. They don't know the difference.
Could I ask the Sharks on right now? Sorry, I don't know your names. I should write them all down. Maybe I can write your names down as I speak. You can name them off, and I'll just keep on writing and speaking.
Okay. Tim Bothwell.
Hello, Tim. Oh, I know Tim. He watched me play.
Dean Holden.
Yeah.
Tom Malloy.
Oh, hello, Tom.
Howdy.
Now, someone wrote down George Santos. Peter Whitney.
Okay, awesome.
Mike Benelli.
Hello, Mike.
Rick Puttock.
Oh, Rick. Hello.
And
Hey, Rick.
Hal Terse he's dropped off the call, but Hal, Pete, and Mike are from the States.
Okay.
And the rest of us, we're familiar with the scene in Canada like yourself. Go ahead.
I'm gonna do an opinion poll by hands.
Okay.
So currently, Hockey Canada, I don't know about Hockey USA, but all training, if not most training, is done on a computer, but it's done for parents, officials, and coaches, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the U.S. is only coaches and officials. There's no parental educational module.
Okay, so there's a gap right there. So I see that as a gap where we have to put it on the pie chart. How do we address that? There's diversity, there's inclusion, there's racism, discrimination, mental wellness, coaching, mentoring. So I see that as an area where hockey can improve on that. So in Canada, do we train our kids for diversity or discrimination?
You mean our players, Brent?
Yeah, our youth under 18.
I don't think, to my knowledge, there's any modules or components within training through Hockey Canada or whatever about diversity. My impression is that now I haven't had to take any of these courses because I did mine 1,000 years ago. So it's based in that context. But my guess right now is that it would be up to the individual coach after they take a respect in sport type of a situation to try to filter that into their own culture. And so in that regard, it would be up to the individual coach to try to foster some of that understanding. I could stand corrected because, again, I haven't taken any courses personally myself. I've given them, but I don't recall seeing or hearing anything about it, not in the last few years anyway.
Okay.
It's been 5 years since I did the respect in sport thing. I think there's a little piece in there, isn't there, Brent?
Yeah,
Yeah,
18
but not nearly enough, but at least it touches on it, but that's really it, to my knowledge.
Mike, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, as far as from the U.S. side, there is, so we do this as, like, I know I do it as an individual coach, and USA Hockey does require, ask the kids to sign a code of conduct. But it was funny, I was just on a call on Monday with our USA Lacrosse membership people, and I couldn't believe the pushback from the administrators and the coaches asking us to do in person and on site diversity, inclusion, bullying training with the kids, like an actual, like down here in the US, we have Positive Coaching Alliance, which is actually the PCA is a pretty big organization. I don't know why it's more West Coast, but it's a really big, California West Coast organization that deals directly with parental modules and player modules and coaches modules. So they've kind of taken the role, but it's not all, none of it's mandated. So what happens is it's on the onus of the organizational leaders to seek them out. And I think to Wally's point earlier in the call, sometimes they seek them out after it's happened instead of seeking them out proactively and building these cultures into our organizations prior to the issues even happening. Now, because the issues are always going to happen. There's always going to be racism. There's always going to be bullying. There's, but if we can mitigate it and get everybody to understand the signs of how it can happen, I think we need to do that at the basic entry level of every sport athlete.
Right.
In these organizations, but it comes down to the parents not pushing back on it and accepting it, and I think it goes back to the organization saying, well, this is our standards, these are our morals, this is what we're going to mandate. If you chose not to come to our organization because you don't want to go to a code of conduct meeting, then maybe you're just not the right person in this organization.
Good comments. I know in hockey, Hockey Canada, you have the board that governs the Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, all throughout, and they mandate rules. So I think it's very important that social media and the parents, I think the demand is out there, and Canada and Alberta and many provinces they have diversity committees, but it's the implementation. And I think the Board of Governors and the representation from each association really need to be they have to work together, I guess you can say, because it's an important time in society where we train our youth. They're a bigger population than us older guys. And I think our youth get it nowadays. They get diversity, they get discrimination, but we have to be able to put the right tools in front of them because they're going to correct people when something's said. And they have a rule in Alberta called 11.1, discrimination and racism. I get the phone calls on the weekly when kids get suspended, but there's no education to educate the kids. What is offside? What can I say? What can't I say? That type of stuff. So hopefully in this day and age, we can all work together and use these computers as a tool to educate our kids and our coaches.
I'm not sure whose hand was up first, but Tom, go ahead.
I just want to say, Brent, Alyssa Big Crow, she ran, I was coaching St. Women last year, and she did a smudge ceremony with the whole team in there, and it went over really well. So
good for her.
The players are really receptive to all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Tom, I find that there's no problem with the players. And the education, Brent, as you've said, is the fact there's no parent education in the Respect in Sport module in Canada is part of that. The mission statement exercise is all about that because it involves the parents. They have to be involved. They don't want their kids to be NHL players when they're born. They care about their growth, their personal welfare, what they're going to do for their entire lives. But in some way, sometime the ego influences and the score clock influences the way we do things. And we're trying to affect that in a very real way. Tim?
I was just going to, I'm just going to chime in. I don't know a lot about, Mike mentioned the PCA, the Positive Coaching Alliance. I don't know a lot about that. He did mention it was optional. It seems to me that the time is right for the development, and Brent, you might be sort of working down this road, but the development of sort of an independent organization like that in Canada that basically governs, diversity in sport and ethical education in sport. And obviously the piece that's still missing on the US side is it does need to be mandatory. And it's a big nut to crack. When you roll into coach mentorship into that, it's just it's money, it's personnel, it's time, it's everybody's time. It's a big nut to crack, but it's good to hear that there's at least an organization in the U.S. trying to go down that road. And I know you're working on that as well, Brent, but it's such an important piece, but nothing gets done on an optional level. And it's really disappointing really to hear, Mike, that there's so much pushback in this day and age, about some simple ethical conduct instruction that you would think majority of coaches would openly embrace that.
Tim, I just wanted to mention the Positive Coaching Alliance. I've been implementing, making coaches aware of it at every clinic I've done for the last 15 years. And I give them the information, the link. It's Phil Jackson is a major part of a 3-minute video, and I'll send that link out to all of the Sharks. In fact, we've talked about this today. It's got incredible tools for like-minded coaches. They're exactly where we come from in terms of a mission statement exercise. It complements it. And the fact that it exists in the States, I think the governing body has to piggyback and take advantage of that in the States, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things too that the pushback that I get from any of these is we have volunteers. Basically, in the U.S., it's basically a volunteer-based organization, right? So to ask somebody to coach a 8U beginner hockey team, you have to do about 8 hours of online training. So sitting at a computer for 8 hours on a call. You need to do a background check. No big deal. Hopefully, we can all do that. You have to do a safe sport course, which could take most people about an hour and a half, 2 hours to complete. And then you have to register and pay for USA Hockey, which down here could be in whatever district you're in, could be about another $75, $100. So the background check could be $80. So now all in, you've asked somebody to, do a lot of hours and a lot of time. And then to add another course in there. And what I've been trying to do from a USA Hockey perspective, and because of my relationship with USA Lacrosse, is I'm just trying to say, well, why don't we have why when we do a Positive Coaching Alliance or a coaching seminar or a coaching ethical conference, why can't it be universally accepted by all the governing bodies? Like if I go to a coaching ethical course or a PCA course, or I do a background check, or I do my safe sport, it should blanket. It should be good for if I want to coach youth basketball, youth lacrosse, youth baseball, I should, because that's what most people like me, like the parents that I deal with, they're coaching every one of their kids' sports. There's very few people that actually volunteer and do these things, and it happens to be the same people all the time. But then you're asking those same people to do repetitive work from an educational standpoint and from a certification standpoint, and it's actually very discouraging. And it's hard to get them now to take the next leap and say, I know you've done all the coaching education, you've done the background check, you've done safe sport. Now we want to put you through an ethical coaching seminar that you're now going to be, we're asking you then to teach. And these are just volunteer people. I think that's why Europe has it so good, right? I think when you see the European model and the Scandinavian model, like those are trained professional trainers. They're paid trainers, recreation directors that run the youth hockey programs. And then you can ask a lot out of them, right? You can say you have to have all these things because you're getting paid, a good amount of money. So to me, I'd rather see an organization spend money on a good director and a good technical director and ethical director any day than send their kids, to Tampa Bay again for another tournament. My 2 cents.
And that's maybe, the ethical director thing, we've talked about this before, Mike, like that maybe is one thing that should come out of this whole revamp of Hockey Canada, where every association is mandated to have somebody on board to be an ethical director, so you've got somebody inside each organization, sort of regularly on his or her schedule, just touching in on coaches, just keeping an eye on things, doing the odd education thing. But, it's such a, it's it's fine for us all to talk about this. It's really a little bit tougher to actually identify what is all this stuff going to look like in terms of money, personnel, time, like you're saying, Mike, putting a plan together to move this forward. But that certainly is one thing, is just to have, each association mandated they must have an ethical coaching, which takes in Wally's piece, the on-ice piece, the coaching piece, but it also takes on the behavioral piece, human nature piece, and the ethical decision-making if there are, behavioral problems, and, helping the coaches walk through the 7 steps to, properly deal with that. They're definitely, that would be a very positive step in the right direction, in my mind at least. But it's a big, tough question.
Yeah, but I know, like I've had these conversations with even USA Hockey from a regional director perspective. These guys are getting paid. These guys and girls at the national offices are getting paid quite a bit of money, and they're bringing in a lot of money. And instead of spending, $4 million on a banquet in Naples, maybe we got to spend money on having somebody tour around and make sure they touch base. And it's culture, right? It's culture driven, and it's just. Maybe that you don't have to teach it in one day. Like it's like anything else, right? If you go to a power skating class on one Monday night with the best power skating coach in the world, you're not learning how to skate properly. You just saw the tools that you would need to have. But then if for the next 25 weeks, if you do it wrong, then you're really good at getting it bad, right? And I think this is the same thing with the cultural piece. If we now can filter in diversity, inclusion, bullying, coaching, ethics, little by little, every week they get drips and drips and drips and drips, just like we teach our kids, right? I mean, I don't just throw everything at the kids and say, okay, tomorrow you're going to learn how to make your bed. It's all about, okay, we're gonna have steps to do this and get there. I think we could do that without overwhelming parents and coaches, and also leveraging who we're paying. Like in the U.S., I pay my $75 as a member, and there's right, Pete. There's 850,000 members. Maybe we can use those resources in a better way than then come back and help the membership.
Go ahead, Brent.
Well, I just want to state some what I've found out in probably 4 or 5 years, that the presidents of the association represent the board. The board represents the masses, and there's 70% of Calgary is Caucasian or white. 30% of Calgary is these beautiful cultures that speak different languages, and 5% is First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. So you have these masses, almost 16,500 before the pandemic. After the pandemic, I think there was close to 2,000 kids that dropped out of hockey. I don't know, for whatever reason, but I think what we need to do is, what I'm hearing is, almost have like summits that are around diversity, ethical teaching, inclusion for USA. The competitive rivalry is there, but we have to be able to work together for the greater good of the kids. Where I had diversity summits and I got so much information out of it. I realized that hockey is a business on the training side. And every time somebody logs in to pay as a parent, me, my wife, more training in the masses. It's a multi-million-dollar business, but we have to really look at how we're going to deliver this training, because it can't be just done on computers. It has to be done in person. It has to be done in NHL rinks. The Calgary Flames just had 7. They filled the Saddle Dome with the WHL with Connor Bedard and the Hitmen. 17,000 people at the Saddle Dome last night. He sold the place out. These are great areas to use training components and train the masses. So I think we have a lot of work to do, but we got to work together.
Mike, Wally.
I'm glad, Brent, you joined the group a few years ago and did a presentation for us. And I believe that Brent listens to every session, even though he's not attending them. And Brent is what I call a practical expert in this area. And where some of us, and Dean in particular, is a theoretical researcher. And I think that we've lost track of fundamental coaching science and research and behavioral science and research about human behaviors and how we can affect them in a positive way. So I think it's really important that the great minds, like people on here, do talk about this topic and influence you said, the president of the board, the association, the leadership group. We need each other. They need us. We need them in terms of improving communication and realizing what we're there for, what's our why. And it gets back to the simplicity of reviewing that, along with everything else that Brent's mentioned in terms of this, the face-to-face sessions. I believe that the time is right, but we don't have that much time. And people have to act now, not later, not because things go bad, but because things are getting better. So that's just my last comment related to the topic. Anybody else know? Rick, I'm always sit back here and I see you thinking, the best listener in the group. And I'm really curious about sort of your thoughts on everything that's been said. We've talked about two countries, different peoples, different backgrounds, and your idea for a solution moving forward or influencing a solution moving forward.
Well, with respect to what Brent's saying, Wally, and what you said earlier about the mission statement, and I look back on my code of conduct that you've referenced, being proactive is so much better than being reactive. And in that sense, I mean, I would support anything that puts education and addressing potential issues before they happen to, in hopefully at least, mitigate or eliminate most of them, and give you a process by which to deal with them when they happen instead of reacting. I think Hal was mentioning how, he got into a situation or is in a situation that he wasn't even in attendance at, and he's being held accountable for it. The question would be, was this anticipated, and was there any process set up before the fact to deal with it in a reasonable fashion and hopefully eliminate the lawyers and all the cost and distraction that goes along with that? So yes, face-to-face learning, I believe, is better than computers, screens. Computers can deliver the information, but they can't necessarily deliver context. You need to be face-to-face, ask questions, have a discussion beyond the concept of the course or the training itself.
I just want to comment on face-to-face communication. I don't even, like, this is the closest thing to face-to-face communication. It's not one speaker speaking all the time.
Agreed.
Where everybody has thoughts and feelings and would like to say something or express themselves. This to me is about the closest online chance at face-to-face communication where we know each other well enough, trust and respect each other well enough to share our thoughts. I just want to say that we're probably going to meet live in Calgary once a month at the coffee house we usually meet at. We've done it 2 weeks ago, and that face-to-face meeting with 7 people, it was all X's and O's. But it was really a neat thing, and I think that's about the right size of people where one can speak and all can listen. When you get bigger, it breaks off into little groups. So it's all for the good of the game, guys. And I don't know if anybody else has any ideas on this topic or anything else they want to talk about. Brent, I'm going to let you sort of summarize everything. And I know with your daughter playing on the midget double A team, I run into your rinks and we just spend more time talking about these kind of things than watching the hockey. But that's a good thing. So, Brent, any comments?
So I'll just leave it with some final comments. Is hockey is at a point where we need to utilize our ambassadors. Our ambassadors, meaning the Ryan Reeves, Matt Dumbas, all the people of color that are in the NHL, the ladies that represent a gender population that also have the LGBTQ plus in our culture. We call it Two Spirit. That we have to educate people. They're the ambassadors. They're going to listen to the leaders. They're the leaders. We also have Connor McDavid and Cale Makar, who can speak on diversity issues, and they're called allies. So if they support these initiatives, the majority of the population will listen to Connor and listen to Cale Makar. So it's important that we come up with the content. They're the ambassadors. They roll out the content, and then the actual instructors and teachers are trained, and they're the diversity teachers or the inclusion teachers at the masses, and they can actually roll out the programs, but the ambassadors are on the computer saying the messages, and we develop a program that's inclusive, and we train our ambassadors so we have millions of kids taught, so we create a better culture. And I think we're getting to that point now where everybody's talking about it. Sometimes you have to have the most uncomfortable talks to move forward, because the world is about bringing people together. And what sports and hockey has done for me and many people, we have to be able to use sports as a tool. And I'll just leave it there. But thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to me.
Brent, thanks for joining us. I'm gonna. I don't even know if I should bring it on because we might never get off. But I'm just trying to refer. This is my perception. In the States, you have a serious ethical problem related to your history and politically the way your country has evolved. And it does come back to politics. And in terms of the discrimination piece, it's, I think, very difficult to deal with. And these ideas for solutions in Canada, I think, might get more traction. But the bottom line to the whole picture, the biggest governing body of all, is our federal government and our provincial governments. So how do you affect those? Well, I believe you do through sport. And every child that plays is going to be a parent that raises their kids, that coaches their kids, and they have jobs, and they may become politicians. So what we're trying to do here, I think, that when you said the greater good, Brent, I call it the good of the game. The game can do so much more in influencing society with a bottom-up approach that accomplishes top-down, inside-out, walking the talk. And I hope to see it happen sooner than later. It won't be in my lifetime, but I hope people sustain this group and keep talking about these kind of topics. And yes, X's and O's are sort of the driver for most of the Sharks. They love to talk about Connor Bedard. And we could talk about the superstars, and they play so much. So in minor hockey, you play your better players so much. But they don't realize that developmentally and ethically and morally, this isn't the right thing to do at that age. it's connected. It's all connected. So I just want to leave everybody with that. And Tim, I'm just wondering if you're still with us, if you've got anything to sort of summarize and add. I just slipped out with Barb. Peter, what do you think?
I think that all the points are obviously spot on, but it always comes down to how to get the word out, how to get the people who really have the actual impact and the ability to get the message out. How do we reach them? How do we get them on board so that they are willing to share that message? Because they're the ones that are going to give it the validity. It's great that we feel this way, and Mike's way more involved in USA Hockey than I am. But until the people who run USA Hockey say we're going to do this, it's just, it doesn't happen on the large scale that Brent was referring to.
See, I think Brent is, with the work he's done on inclusion, he's hitting more numbers than we can imagine. He talked about respect in sport and how many, it's a great tool. I did the most recent one because I had to, being involved as a mentor with U13 kid teams.
Yeah.
Unbelievable module. Unbelievable. Really
I think
exactly what we're talking about.
you have to have obviously. I heard an independent and maybe another option, because that is one of the issues. Is talking to a hockey president of Alberta. Not every parent wants to take diversity and respect and inclusion courses. He outright said that's going to be your biggest issue. When it comes to Ryan Reeves and every single NHL player, not every single, but the group of BIPOC players, yeah, I personally talk to them on their cell phones. They're in to support initiatives that are around discrimination and racism. Had a personal talk with Matt Dumba, one of the nicest guys. Put me in touch with his dad, said he would support it. He's in touch with HDA, and personally told me that he would support these initiatives in any way we can. So I think it's just reaching out to the people that truly want to do it. And they're just like me, human beings that have been affected through this, and we want to make it better. But I think somebody said it needs to be an independent. We need a partnership with a businessman, and also a learning, maybe it's somebody that has that education and in that area to roll out the curriculum, because I think it just can be an option. To mandate it to Hockey USA and Hockey Canada it's already tough, but I've rolled out, I'd say, about 7,000 to 10,000 people just doing it on a part-time basis, and with the Calgary Flames, with the Wranglers, the Hitmen, Imperial Oil, and on my personal time. So if I can roll out 10,000 people in attendance on my diversity sessions, imagine if we had partners, then we can roll out hundreds of thousands of training sessions. So I think if you're passionate about it, it can happen.
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of sum up to Brant too, and Brant, send those guys my way. So basically, what I've done is I built that model. That's the model that I work with every single day. We just did a program in Yonkers last week at Anson Carter, Keandre Miller. We do a diversity, inclusion, acceptance, bullying program. We did it with the Yonkers School District, had the New York Rangers donate a set of floorball, equipment to every school in Yonkers, which means in our district here, that will reach about 29,000 kids. So 29,000 kids will be playing hockey in the city of Yonkers with Anson Carter, Keandre Miller, all these, Boo Nieves, a lot of guys down here that can the kids can say, well, look, that's what I look like, and this guy's playing in NHL, and I think teaching them about hockey, but also to Wally's point, sport is where the administrators and the principals and the athletic directors and the supervisors, that's what bought them into this. This wasn't a, hey, we're going to come in and give an auditorium speech on diversity and inclusion. No, we're actually going to get the kids playing hockey and learning all the different skills that hockey teaches and hiding all of that within it. And I was in 42 schools in the Yonkers. I don't recall seeing, I don't even remember seeing not one white kid in the whole time I was in all these schools delivering equipment. And all those kids this year will be playing hockey in some way or another, and getting this messaging, whether it's intentional or overtly, they'll be getting this messaging all the time sent to them. And I think that to me is the most powerful way to make change.
Tim, when you were away, I don't know if you listened to a lot of the conversations, Tim, but I'm just curious about whatever you've heard or haven't heard, doesn't matter. I'm just curious about your sort of takeaways in terms of how to use this information moving forward and getting it out there.
I was listening as much as I could. I mean, I do really applaud Brent and all he's doing in this area, and it's good to hear he has some corporate people helping him out. It's just such an important area. If I had some answers, I'd offer them up. But I really think, as I mentioned before, that just starting with having an ethical coaching director in each organization would go a long way. But then again, you have to look at, okay, that person needs to be qualified. They need to be educated there properly. Likely they need to be paid something to do it properly. It's a big project, and money talks in this day and age, and probably corporate sponsorship is really the only way to go in terms of getting something like that rolling. And the environment is obviously right now for doing that. And again, I'll be really interested to see what the board at Hockey Canada sort of comes up with, because that's they're sort of the single biggest thing right now is the ethical coaching direction and education. But
there are a number of groups, like in Canada, there's one sport law, it's similar to the Positive Coaching Alliance. I don't think it's as influential as it would like to be. The Positive Coaching Alliance, I thought it influenced me. Online, however they put their things together, the hands-on resources they provided, I printed off and shared their email link so that any coach I've ever done a clinic with, if they want to get more information, support for the code of conduct, without calling it a code of conduct or rules to follow, they just have, one of the key things is their elm tree, just an excellent visual imagery of coaching and what you're doing it for. It's the mission statement, plain and simple. So you do have that organization, which must have corporate sponsorship. And I'm not sure how to use that corporate sponsorship, but that's a very powerful organization which parallels and the Respect in Sport group in Canada. And I think it's minds like those people with that need to get together that are doing it, trying to make it effective. And I'd like to know that more people would get on this session. Not that we can handle that much more and keep it interactive, but just passing the word on. If you like a link or like a video edit of one of our sessions, I'm sure you all have your large networks of coaches. And I would share the Positive Coaching Alliance link that I'm going to share with you, and boy, pass it on to anybody and tell them to look into it. It's going to make a difference. So,
But people won't, Wally, generally speaking, it needs to be mandated. It needs to be, whether it's Hockey Canada, USA Hockey, start at the top and somehow mandate to the branches. And I know there's a lot that they can't mandate to them, but start to the top, mandate it to the branches, mandate it to the association, mandate it to each of the programs in the association. It's the only way it's going to happen. You know,
no, you're right. The most powerful tool is mandated certification and implementing this as a part of it. Michael?
No, I was just going to say that the mandating's great, but then we have to also make sure that we enforce those mandates, right? That you can't, it's like everybody goes and sees it, but then somebody has to be the bad guy. Somebody has to say, listen, this person overstepped the boundaries. This person, did something that doesn't fall into the role of, what we should be doing. But again, it takes time. And I think it's just the first step is the hardest step, as Brant said too. Sometimes you just got to say, listen, this is what we're instituting. Maybe don't try going after the 12U, 15U, 16U kids right now. Just say every new player that comes into the organization starting on 2024 goes through this. And then the next year, then the next year, and the next year. And eventually you're going to wean out the people that shouldn't be in the game. And we're going to encourage the people that should be and give them more, keep continuing to give them more resources to be successful. But I got to run, guys. But that was great. Thanks, Wally, again.
Okay, thank you. Well, for everybody here, the mission statement exercise to me is still the most powerful thing. And then creating ethical coaching modules will be supported by that exercise by coaches. I think it's just a possibility, and I'll keep preaching, and hopefully I'll keep working at it. So I'm not sure if anybody's got anything else to add or any ideas. Kim, I agree with you on the mandation. I agree with Mike on the enforcement. Well, the enforcer is the mission statement on a business card in the household of every parent, in the hands of every participant, every coach, and every parent in the land, because their coaches have to take that program. And that's a mandated tool. And as I look at it, that's the way of enforcing the mandate. It's not from the top down. It's from the inside out. And the parents created that mission statement with Tom's team. I think it's powerful. I've had a number of people get back to me on that mission statement, and they've used it. They're passing it on. They're promoting it. Tom?
Mike, Tom?
That mission statement did make a big difference with, because the parents, I'd said, like, we got our staff, but if I need someone, I'd like to be able to call you. And the parents got together and said, well, if you need us on the ice, we need a 2-week notice, and like the first time I needed someone, my son called and said, a client just came into the office. I can't be at practice. So the 2-week notice wasn't, so that changed that totally. But I want to tell you 2 success stories, and they both have to do with Wally. The breakout, Wally has this whole routine with the breakout where it starts with the goalie passing, and then everybody just lines up and goes through the sequences. And we did that, and it's made a total difference. Our D are driving the back of the net, tight turn, coming out, doing all sorts of things they never did before. And then our D, also, it's a 1-on-5 league, right? Boys, we play against boys. And guys try to go through everybody. And our D had the habit of swishing at the puck, towards the outside. Whereas if they miss, then they're going that way and the other team, guys going down the middle. So I did the sequence Wally does. You start off with no stick whatsoever. And I did it starting in the red line. They both went, touched the blue line, and, the player attacks. And we'd done something like about 2 months ago, like it before. But we did that, and it made like not once during the entire game. We played the team that eliminated us for minor hockey week. They beat us 2-0. But we tied them 2-2, and not one defenseman swished at the puck the entire time. So I'm just saying this because so many times you do things in practice and you don't know if they took effect or whatever. But these are two of the most, you could just tell it changed the way they played. So probably because the kids are really young, they can, adapt this stuff. But,
Listen, I'll share the two things he described. The breakout progression I did with his midget double A team. And it's almost an anal progression. The goalies are passing the puck to begin with while the players learn to skate in time, low and time support. And you work everybody in, interchanging who's a defenseman, a winger, or a center. And they develop the tactical skating and hockey sense of a breakout. And that's a progression that worked extremely well. The next one is the one-on-one horseshoe, handicap horseshoe. So if you can see my fingers, the coach is in the far corner with pucks. The forward comes down one side below the far blue line and gets a pass. The D comes up the other side at the blue line and pivots and skates backwards and play the rush. But they do so with their hands behind their back. Stride backwards. Keep them on the outside, shoulder alignment. The second stage is with a stick turned over. The third stage is with the stick normal. And they have to go to both sides, so they transition pivot going right to left and left to right. And the forward builds up as much speed as he can to receive that puck and stress out the defender who plays the rush, keeping them on the outside. So I don't know if that's enough of a visual for all of you, but those two drills and those links, I will just share with them immediately before I share the whole presentations with the large population, and I'll comment on Tom's comments on appreciating that with his U13 team. Because Tom, I don't know that I would have ever tried it with the U13 team, because I don't know if they can skate well enough backwards, but obviously they must be able to if they aren't getting beat on rushes. But
well, they're pretty good. They can skate backward compared to the people they're playing against, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty good for their age.
Okay.
So it's just not too many things you do that you just notice a night and day difference, immediately. So that's why I mentioned it, because we'd done the whole progression you talked about 2 months ago. So I just put it down to starting with their no stick with the hands, and they did it then stick upside down. So we did it for about 15 minutes, but it made a humongous difference in how they played one-on-ones. And then doing the doing the whole breakout sequence, we did the part where we had actually just the D going back for the pucks and the forwards, because we'd gone through the whole routine before. And to be making the tight turns behind the net and escape moves, that's a big step up in, how well they break out, because they, usually stood still and tried to pass. So that was a huge difference as far as I could see.
Okay, anybody got anything else to add? Rick, I know you've got tons of technical things you could add, but I always admire you for what you've accomplished as a coach and what you're doing now mentoring in the Strathmore organization. Are the issues in Strathmore as obvious as they are that our group talked about today? Are there as many challenges, or are they relatively small?
I would say they're pretty much on par, Wally.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment on Tom's statement about or actually it was yours, Wally, that you didn't think the kids would be able to handle the skating at U13, if I'm correct there. Is that right?
Yes.
One observation I've had over the last few years is that we tend to categorize kids, and not only on the hockey rink, but in life in general, on what they should be capable of at this age. And I've learned that there's a fallacy in that thinking. We should be reasonably challenging them above and beyond that within reason, and see what they can absorb. Let them tell us what they're capable of, instead of us predetermining that and then withholding some training, some information, some ideas that they could act on now instead of sometime in the future. And that translates onto the hockey rink as well. That I don't feel it hurts to run an exercise, run a drill above and beyond what the norm would be, and see what they do with it, see what they take out of it. And I've had positive results, such as what you had there, more often than not.
Well, it was a kind of a neat practice, because 3 of my girls, college girls, came to the practice because they had a bye weekend. And then Cassie was there. So it was us 3 and Cassie. So we did it, and I'd stop them once in a while, say this and that, and then she'd stop them and give a few little pointers to them. And I could not believe the difference, because, as we all know, Pee-wee kids are it's more 1-on-5 than anything, not a whole lot of passing. Everybody has breakouts, but once they get into the neutral zone, the blinders usually go on. There are a few players that move the puck, but so you have to be able to win a 1-on-1, especially when you're a girl and you're playing against a 6 boy, because that's what's happened now. Some of these kids are just humongous.
I'm going to share a story, Tom, it relates to the drill sequence, the handicap portion. I went to my first Spengler Cup, coaching European pros and the top 10 amateurs from Canada, 5 NCAA and 5 CIS players, playing the first ever Spengler Cup with, basically an amateur team combined with European pros. George Kingston did a double regroup attack drill to begin the practice. The defenseman could not skate the drill on big ice. They couldn't transition skate, which is what the handicap horseshoe teaches you to maintain momentum for going from forward to backward and get striding sooner, allowing only maybe one crossover to get out of that transition, or one cross under. And George did the drill, and I said, George, just give me 10 minutes with the guys, the D, to work on transition skating, because they can't set a gap and they get lost on the rush. The gap's too far, or they're too close, or they can't skate the transition skating needed on the big ice because of the amount the Europeans are going to pass. 10 minutes, problem solved, drill worked, and lo and behold, that competition, we ended up winning the gold medal in the shootout. And that drill contributed to the defenseman's confidence in how to play situations.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
like, just like your girls.
it's a great sequence. And what I did is I adapted a little, Rousselaine would do a drill that, like I talked about, you leave from the red line and the offensive and the defensive player both go touch their blue line. And then now the defenseman's got to go up and transition skate forward to backwards.
Yeah.
And we did, so it was a little bit of an adaptation, but it did make an incredible difference.
Tom, I'm throwing a curve at you here. How does serving hurt or hinder or help the playing of a rush? Maybe prevent playing of a rush.
Well, I think it depends. If the player's coming down the middle, you really can't surf, right?
Right.
If the player goes wide, at some point you turn and you angle and you keep them on the outside and you angle and you finish.
Yeah.
So, I think it's becoming more and more in the game that you surf instead of, like I remember TJ teaching the defense. You go backwards and then you kind of back up a little bit facing them and then go forward.
Yep.
To get them in the corner. I think surfing, you turn a little quicker.
Yeah.
And you angle. That's my perception of it anyways.
Yep. I've got an anal detail here. We'll get to it. We'll go ahead, Rick, with your point.
I was just going to add to Tom's comment. It's one more tool. If you teach them the surfing aspect of things, depending on the situation as they read it, it's one more tool they can use to effectively or more effectively play the game. And back to my earlier point, I would teach it rather than withhold it.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment, working with the national team, I learned something about playing the rush better because we played the Soviets. Now, Rick, Peter, how do you teach a defenseman to align when they're playing a one-on-one? Peter? A rush.
Well, for us, the points that we would cover is we want that player, the attacker, to be on our outside shoulder. For me, I'm not a fan of the stick waving in any way, shape, or form. What I like to do is I like to have them actually just point their stick at the puck to give the illusion that I'm on the puck. And that allows me to move left or right, because that position will keep the stick and the puck right in the middle of my body, so I can easily move to either side. So that's kind of a couple of little basics that I teach the guys.
Rick, anything else?
I agree with that. Use the stick for steering, one hand on the stick. I see too many of them trying to use two hands on a backward skate, defending a one-on-one. No swishing of the stick. It's elbow in, so they don't know your range in case a poke check situation arises, and you've got that element to use to your advantage too, but basically the same way Peter described it.
Yeah, and that's what you see a lot of, right, Rick? You see a lot of that player that has the arm fully extended. You see that all the time, as opposed to having, like you said, that little trick where even have the guys pull the elbow back a little bit, so that there is almost that extra room that you have as a defender.
I agree with that.
Okay, what I learned from the Soviets, and Dave King actually discovered it, the outside shoulder alignment to the inside shoulder wasn't good enough. We had to line up the shoulder with the crotch of the attacker. In other words, the horizontal gap had to be tighter. It's one thing to get a vertical gap, but the horizontal gap against better skaters, faster skaters, and we could skate well enough backwards because we practice it with the national team. That drill progression was created with the national team. We did a lot of individual work on transition skating. Now, the teaching points, Tom, and I don't know whether you reinforce them or not, but I did a high performance clinic on defensive tactical play in Saskatchewan. And it's not that it was over the heads of the coaches. It's what we're talking about. It's just that they have skill experts to teach those things, so they didn't really pay attention to the teaching details that we do. So I wasted my time, really. Dave King sent me to do this because that's what we did with the national team. But Tom, when your players skate backwards, they've got to transition. And a former national figure skating coach, the guy told me when I did this at a clinic 30 years ago, he says, turn your toes, unweight, and get back into backward striding with a cross under and stride. It's a figure skating idea, that technique we had to teach.
That's a Choctaw.
Yep. The second thing, striding backwards, was sit tall, ride a horse, C-cut only, and it's actually a J-stroke, more blade on the ice, and bring your feet back under your body. So sit tall, ride a horse, J-stroke, and bring the heel straight back. If you keep crossing over and turning your butt and weaving, you're not going to be able to establish that vertical gap. If you don't stride backwards, you won't be able to set a horizontal gap. Now, are those too demanding to expect coaches to teach, or we need a coaching specialist? I'm gathering that there.
I think you mention it and you teach it just like everything, right? And they all catch on at a different level.
Yeah.
You
I
guys
think you've got to get coaches to accept that level of detail in their own training.
Yeah.
And be able and capable and willing to transfer that into their players.
Yeah.
I think maybe that constant crossover is the first thing you want to eliminate. You know, some people go backwards the whole time crossing over.
Yeah.
I think it's because they're working so hard, they think they're going faster. But then the good puck handler just waits till they cross over one way and they're gone.
Yeah, most players can't stride backwards. They cross their feet too often, and they don't understand the importance of that ability to stride and maintain the gaps. So Dave King referred to the horizontal and the vertical gaps, and they're a factor. Now, I had a session with Daryl Belfry yesterday, and all the defense are literally constantly discouraging the breakout, not allowing them to cross the first blue line, pressuring earlier, getting up there, standing up, so you don't transition, but you prevent the long pass in the neutral zone because the defender's closer. And Tom, like I said with your team, your players were on the ringette line, and the other team was attacking from the neutral zone, and they had backed up too far.
Oh yeah, they players think they're safer if they back into the goalie, give the player all of the room in the world. But we talk about that all the time. Get up the ice, and they're getting better at it.
But that transition drill is supposed to establish that tighter gap.
Yeah.
Now, Kim McCullough was on last week. I don't know, Peter, you heard what she said, but her U9 team is playing whole ice hockey in the second half in their association. Why, I don't know. But what the U11 coaches, she's seeing the weakest players are playing defense, and they're told not to cross center ice. So that means they're not developing the skill package needed to play the game in all three zones. They're just putting the weakest players back there so they don't give up breakaways. And at minor hockey, and Tom's prevented it, the best players goes through the team and scores. So there's a developmental part of doing things the right way, the right time, and teaching detail that I believe can be repaired a little bit in the coaching modules so that coaches accomplish a purpose in a drill. And many of the drills they do, the players don't have the defensive tactical skating skills to do the drills effectively and the offensive transition skills to do the drills purposely and effectively because they don't teach. They just do drills. So anyway, we've had a good session today. Rick, I want to thank you for coming on, and
Pleasure.
would you be able to join us, Rick, on a Wednesday at Cadence in Calgary?
I'm afraid Wednesday morning is my last working episode in the week. It frees up my Thursdays, so I'm not at this point.
At least we got you Thursdays. Okay, Mike, anything else to add?
Peter.
Mike John, Peter's here.
Oh, Peter, anything else?
No, I enjoyed it as ever. I'm glad I was able to get back with you guys. I haven't been around the last couple of weeks, so I missed it.
Good having you. Good having you. And if any of you know anybody else that's on the same mindset that has the time, let's get them on. Now, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Wally, in my mentoring, watching numerous different coaches running practices, running drills, there's very little attention to the detail when they're doing it. They'll run a flow drill, they'll run a one-on-one drill. Kids are gapping way too loose. They're turning and skating forwards before they turn backwards. And for the most part, the coaches just don't address those things. They've got 10 minutes allotted for this exercise and they're going to get through it and then we'll move on to the next one. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed in the bigger picture as well. Getting back to teaching the details of the game, such as the transition skating and the backward striding that you referenced a few minutes back.
We got a full ice practice tonight, but it's right at 4:15, so already a couple of players can't get there because it's so close to when school ends, eh? I got one note from a parent and her daughter doesn't get out till 4.
Where's the practice at, Tom?
Pro child.
Yeah, I'm going to go to your game Friday night. Outdoor game?
Yeah, we're playing an outdoor game. You can see their team. Thank God it's not as cold as yesterday. Holy jeez. The temperature's single digits now.
The 2 rep teams are going to go toe-to-toe tonight, the outdoor rink Friday night.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you knew, but I've had COVID. 2 Thursdays ago, I got COVID. 5 days, I tested okay again. And last night, I didn't get groceries for a week and a half. Last night, my bill was $300. I had to go and get enough groceries and
You eat a lot of food.
a lot of food. I ran out of canned food and I had to buy a bunch.
You can have something besides filet, you know, Wally.
I look at the price of fish. Oh my God. And, but I do have an occasional steak. All right. Okay, everybody. Thanks very much for coming on. I'm glad Dean was able to kickstart the ethical discussions because everything we're talking about ain't going to happen if we don't do the ethical things right. I don't worry about the X's and O's anymore and I don't get upset. But if there's behavioral issues and they're on the mission statement business card that's on the magnet, they have to be addressed.
Wasn't it terrible that somebody like Mike Benelli or Hal Turris might quit the game because of them going after him? Not even there. For that, the kids having a cage fight in the room. You know, that's unbelievable. That's just a cop out to be seen to be doing something.
Well, let's see if we can be proactive and empower coaches more with handling those things and being prepared for when you're not there. I think that, I didn't ask those questions, but I know of coaches who have left the rink early and stuff has happened when they've left the rink. And I've never heard of a coach staying until the last kid was out of the room and in their car going home. But that's what Jordan Fentons does, and Rick, you do it as well.
First in, last out.
Yep. And that's something to bring into the coaching module is are you willing to do this? Because it's at least an extra 40 minutes of time arriving and maybe another 45 minutes or an hour before you go home.
We have those parent dressing room monitors that do that.
Well, at least you've allotted for it.
Yeah. And that's common now, having mothers in the dressing room. But what about guys in the dressing room, in the guys' room? Dads or no? You see what I mean?
No, it's harder, like, for sure.
Well, hopefully, if the team thinks about, the players think about what they're there for, and we start to do better things, we develop better camaraderie and teamwork and respect and trust, those things won't happen. Or they'll happen and be able to be dealt with in an agreed upon way before going to a multi-million-dollar court case.
I'm gonna, Wally jumping in there again. My code of conduct has been developed over years, and now I have to add cage matches in the dressing room as another item is not permitted and will be addressed in this fashion should I be coaching again.
And I think
That's my proactive thing.
Yeah.
You're ready for it, you warn them about it, and you're in full license to deal with it when it happens. And quite frankly, it doesn't happen that often once you take that measure.
Now, cage fighting is fighting with a mask on?
Yeah, the kids have and I think this is why the sticks are so high and all that. With that cage on, I think they think that that stops you from getting hurt. Having that cage on, your brain is still getting knocked all over the place. The only thing that the helmet and the cage stops is broken skulls and stuff like that. And your brain is still flying all over the place. And I think it's influenced the game of, like, I know with the teams I've had to show kids how to put their stick up in front of their face to protect their head. Like my grandson who plays junior A. Someone's coming at him and he's, his stick is down. Instead, I told him, you put your hand up like this, your top hand, and you protect your head.
Lumber sandwich, I called it.
Well, that's lumber sandwich is this, but you go like this, you protect your head, right? Yeah. And he never did it, and he got a few concussions and midget and all that, and because he never protected himself, and I think they think that cage and coaches thing protects them, but it doesn't protect them that much.
Listen, because I've got Peter on, when I was coaching high school sports, I happened to be driving home, and in front of this Max convenience store, there was about 50 kids gathered around a group of two girls fighting, cheering the fight on. I got out of the car, broke the fight up, pointed to the football players who I had just run practice with that were watching, and called them on allowing this to happen. And I talked to them after practice. But when this is a generational thing, and I don't know if anybody's heard of it before, but when I was teaching high school, on a birthday, you had to take a punch whether you were a boy or a girl. That's what they were doing. Like, hello, where did this come from?
Did you
And
get shoes who punches you?
I have no idea, but it was going on in my era where these two girls, one of them was a birthday girl and she fought back and everybody kept egging them on. So they were, everybody was looking forward to birthdays back in the day. So
I don't think so.
that's really, really bad. You know,
Presidents are better. Presidents are way better.
Yeah.
yeah, they make a little more sense and there's a little more respect in them. And wow, I wonder if it all came from watching the only sport in the world that allows fighting other than WWF and boxing. And that's ice hockey. So, at least at the professional level. Well, look, thanks for your time, everybody. I'm really glad we're all able to get on. And if you got any other ideas for people to come on, I'm thinking of some other people to come on and kickstart discussions. We generally get going once they get going, and I like the style of everybody being able to contribute. So, thank you very much, everybody. And Tom, we'll see you Friday night.
All right, wear your
Take
warm
care.
jacket.
Pardon, Tom?
Wear your warm jacket.
Yeah, I've got a warm jacket and an old Russian hat with big ear flaps. I've got my Japanese winter down-filled long top coat, boots. I'm going to be prepared, and it isn't that bad.
You're gonna blend right in, Wally.
I'll fit in. Okay. Take care, everybody.
I
All
know.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.